Thank you for being here, Senator Blumenthal. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much to the families who've traveled from across the country here to speak out. When he was elected, President Trump promised to drain the swamp here in Washington. Well, 10 months later, we all know how that is working out. Instead of draining the swamp, he's filled it up with some of the swampiest creatures ever. And it keeps getting scarier. Michael Dourson might be the worst yet. President Trump's EPA administrator, Scott Pruitt, built his career working for industry. He challenged EPA's health and safety standards in court at every step of the way. Now comes President Trump's nominee to lead the EPA's Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention, Michael Dourson. Dr. Dourson has made a career of creating junk science for industry. His work on chemicals like PFOA and TCE has been used to justify weak safety standards that put people's health and safety at risk. Today we have several families with us from across the country, from states like Indiana, New York, Tennessee, Idaho, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Alaska. These families have lost loved ones, and their own health is at risk because they have been exposed to some of those same dangerous chemicals. The families with us today are so worried they have traveled from across the country to tell their senators to oppose Dr. Dourson's nomination. Last year, I worked across party lines to pass the first ever reform of the nation's chemical safety law, the Frank R. Lautenberg Chemical Safety Act of the 21st century. The new law requires the EPA to evaluate new and existing chemicals, and it gives the EPA the tools to be a tough watchdog. That's what we want, a tough watchdog, keeping us safe from dangerous chemicals we come in contact with every day. But the EPA under Scott Pruitt and President Trump is already taking steps to undermine the Lautenberg Act. And Michael Dourson is the wrong person to run that program. Not only has Dr. Dourson worked for industry, he has a record of failing to disclose his conflicts of interest. In just one glaring example, the state of West Virginia hired his firm, Toxicology Excellence for Risk Assessment, or TARA, to convene an expert panel on the health impacts of PFOA. And then TARA appointed Dourson to chair that panel. PFOA is a chemical in Teflon linked to cancer. Dourson and TARA had done paid work for both of the companies that made the chemicals involved in the spill. I just want to read that again. Absolutely amazing. Dourson and TARA had done paid work for both of the companies that made the chemicals involved in the spill. But that only came to light when a reporter began asking questions. In fact, Dourson and TARA have been paid by more than 3 dozen companies or trade associations to work on 3 dozen chemicals. This includes TCE, 4,4-dioxane. Both of those chemicals are under review by the EPA office that Dourson has been nominated to lead. And it also includes the pesticide chlorpyrifos. EPA scientists had recommended banning it until Scott Pruitt reversed them after meeting with the CEO of Dow Chemical, its manufacturer. Michael Dourson's confirmation hearing is tomorrow, and today I'm calling on senators to say enough is enough. It shouldn't matter what party you're from. Installing a toxicologist for hire to run the EPA's Toxics Bureau crosses the line. And now, the clap, that's good, I like that. And now let me turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Senator Richard Blumenthal. Dick has always been a champion. Richard's always been a champion for public health and safety.
Thank you, Tom.
Dick,
Thank
pleasure.
you. Speaking of clapping, how about a round of applause for Tom Udall? Around the nation, we know as well as in New Mexico, you know even better that Tom has been a relentless advocate for environmental values, for health and safety, and as a former Attorney General, as I am, he knows that enforcement is the key to making laws effective. The best laws on the books are dead letter if they're unenforced. And we need someone who is going to be a watchdog, not a lapdog, for the special interest chemical industry and other producers of contaminants and substances that can literally kill people or stunt the growth of children or make people sick. That's why we're here today. I want to thank Tom for his advocacy, but also especially all the folks who come from across the country. Your being here really sends a profound and powerful message. Don't doubt for a moment that your faces and voices are making a difference, and especially Shazi Visram, who is from Weston, Connecticut, and the former CEO of a company known as Happy Family. It's an organic baby food company, and I am so proud that she is here today because she knows and she shows that you can be a good, solid business and still do the right thing. You don't need to cut corners or break laws or show contempt for the rules that protect people's health and safety. You can do it right and be extremely successful. And Shazi being here today from Connecticut is enormously meaningful. You know, we know why we're here, which is that Michael Dourson, throughout his career, has been linked to former clients that produce junk science, that make chemicals. When we talk about draining the swamp, here's a swamp that will be polluted by someone who will contaminate it with neurotoxins and carcinogens and other substances that do grave harm to people. The swamp will be even more contaminated with carcinogens and neurotoxins. Mr. Dourson's track record shows he's unfit for this job. I will vote against him if his nomination reaches the floor. He has, among other things, worked for a company or an organization known as the Center for Indoor Air Research. The Center for Indoor Air Research has, in effect, downplayed the health risks of secondhand smoke. He's been an advocate, in effect, for the tobacco industry. That's the kind of person that we do not want in a job that has a public trust at EPA to protect us from air contaminants like secondhand smoke. So we know why we're here, so do you, and again, my thanks to all the advocates. You can make a difference. We have just a few days, and we're going to keep the pressure on, and thanks so much for all your help. And now I want to introduce Michael Hickey, I think. Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Michael Hickey of Hoosick Falls, New York.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Let's give Richard a round of applause here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to say a couple of words about each of our guests as they come up. They're very special guests, as I've said, from all across the country. First is Michael Hickey of Hoosick Falls, New York. Michael's father worked at the St. Gobain Performance Plastics plant, where Teflon was manufactured, and the father later died of kidney cancer. Michael is credited with discovering the PFOA contamination in Hoosick Falls. Michael, please come forward and speak to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Boy, it's been a long few years for us in New York and Hoosick Falls, and I thought our battles were over maybe 2 years ago. Sorry about that. I apologize. I tend to mumble a little bit, so I apologize ahead. As I was saying, it's been a long couple of years in New York for us. We've gone through state hearings, and you know it's been a tough process on our village. And I felt that it was very important to come today you know, to represent my father and our town and really the small industrialized villages across the country. We've done a lot of research and self-educating over the last couple of years and trying to figure out, you know, what was causing the illnesses in our village. And I think that over the past 2 years, we've worked hard. People in Hoosick Falls and Petersburg have been blood tested. The chemical is unquestionably bad for the people in our village, Petersburg and Bennington, around us, and that was only because of the findings in West Virginia. But I think what's important to note for us is that, you know, in New York State, it's been a kind of a back and forth on trying to figure out who was responsible, why weren't we found earlier for the findings. And we essentially, the EPA stepped in, and they played the biggest role in Hoosick Falls by cutting off the people from drinking the water supply. And by reading up on Dr. Dourson, it's very concerning, not just for Hoosick Falls, but I think for small communities across the country, to downplay the significance of these chemicals. I think you have a specific role, and where we kind of dropped the ball in New York was that we have general agencies of the Department of Health and the DEC. They're not specialized in all these chemicals. There's 82,000 unregulated chemicals that are out there. So we depend on the EPA, and specifically this position that he would be filling, to protect us going forward. And by reading up on any of the information on Dr. Dourson, we know that he won't be capable of doing that. And just hoping that our voices that are heard today, and people will hear the voices tomorrow and not confirm him going forward. But that's all I have for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Next is Gwen Young, whose family moved to Hoosick Falls, New York, after the water well in their home in a nearby town was significantly contaminated with PFOA. Gwen is 12 years old. Her PFOA levels were the highest recorded in the community. Please, Gwen, come forward and speak with us. And her mom is here with her. Emma. Her mom, Emma, is here.
I am the highest blood level out of the two towns, Hoosick Falls and Petersburg, New York, out of the children. My life has definitely changed since we figured out that it was in our water. I'm never going to look at water the same. My mom gave up we gave up our dream house because she was afraid to live in her home, and I was too. I was afraid that something would happen or someone would get sick or something. Through this whole thing, I don't really feel safe anywhere I go. Because no matter where you are or where you go, it follows you no matter what. You always remember what happened. The last thing I want to see is kids losing their parents to cancer or diseases, or parents losing their kids. I know that it has happened, and I hope to see that the future will be better than the past. I don't want this to have to happen to other kids. I don't think that Michael Dourson is cut out to be in the position he is nominated for. You have to be the change you wish to see in the world. So please vote no and be that change.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gwen. The next speaker is Stacy Davidson of Johnson County, Indiana. Stacy's stepson, Zane, has been undergoing treatment for cancer for 3 years now. The incidence of cancer in Johnson County is above the national average. Parents like Stacy are concerned that chemicals like TCE may be causing these cancers. Stacy, please join us up here. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stacy Davidson, and I did travel from Johnson County, Indiana to be here today. On June 3rd, 2014, my stepson Zane was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a day that will forever change the very core of who we are as a family. During our son's fight against cancer, we quickly found we were not alone. Walking into the oncology clinic at Riley Hospital for Children in Indianapolis, we would see children from our county on a weekly basis. Since 2010, 42 children have been diagnosed with pediatric cancer in Johnson County. 42 children is not a coincidence, nor is it bad luck. Rather, 42 children in 7 years is an epidemic. We deserve answers and to know if there is a contaminant responsible for the diagnoses in our area. Michael Dourson stands behind increasing the acceptable levels of certain contaminants, including TCE. This will, with absolute certainty, be a detriment and increase the national average of cancer diagnoses. How can we accept that when the cancer rate in Johnson County is already higher than the national average? To tell your child that they have this disease and to watch them endure the pain of treatment itself is heart-wrenching at best and not something any parent should have to do. We are urging the Senate to choose our children over Michael Dourson. Zane couldn't be with us today because he's in school to his dismay. But when I asked him what he wanted to say, it was this: fight for us. Find out why we are getting sick. So I ask you this: what if it was your child? How hard would you fight and what lengths would you go to not only protect your own, but all the children, including those that have not been diagnosed yet? Saying no to Michael Dourson is part of that fight. Thank you so much.
Stacy, thank you so much, and thank you for your courage. Next, I'd like to introduce Jerry Ensminger of White Lake, North Carolina. Jerry's daughter, Janie, was one of the many who developed cancer after drinking tap water at Camp Lejeune Marine Base. That water was contaminated with TCE and PCE, and President Obama in 2012 signed a law which was called the Janie Ensminger Act, which ensures the government will provide health care to everyone who became sick after drinking the contaminated water. Jerry, please come forward. He's a Marine. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am a retired Marine. Janie was the only one of my 4 daughters to have been conceived, carried, or born while we lived aboard Camp Lejeune. When Janie was 6 years old, she was diagnosed with cancer. We watched Janie die a little bit at a time for nearly 2.5 years before she finally passed away at the age of 9. I never found out about the contamination in the drinking water at Camp Lejeune until 1997, which was 3 years after I retired. And when I heard the report about the contamination and the possible link to that contamination and my daughter's cancer, I was walking from the kitchen to the living room to watch the evening news when I heard the reporter on the local news say that. I dropped my plate of spaghetti on the living room floor. I finally got a glimmer of hope that I was going to get an answer to a nagging question that had stuck with me ever since she was diagnosed. Well, that's been 20 years ago, this past August. I have worked very closely with the Senate delegation from North Carolina, Senators Hagan, Senator Burr, Senator Tillis now, and all 3 of them were fully behind Camp Lejeune, and the most prolific contaminant at Camp Lejeune was TCE. This Dr. Dourson, and I hate to even call him doctor, I'm serious. I don't even think the man deserves a title. But this man has done everything in his power to downplay the effects of these chemicals. and he's making a living from doing it. Now, I'll tell you what happened in Las Vegas on Sunday was terrible. It was horrible. It was reprehensible. 59 people dead, 500 and some people injured. But let's take this into perspective. If this Dourson character is confirmed, he has the potential of killing tens of thousands of our yet unborn children. And some of you standing out here right now. This man cannot be put in that position. He's shown that he's not an impartial judge. I found it rather interesting that I saw a quote from Dr. Dourson whenever he was asked about his affiliation with polluters and industry. And he made the statement that Jesus hung around with prostitutes and tax collectors. He even dined with them. Well, number one, I really have a problem with somebody comparing themselves to Jesus, first and foremost. Secondly, Jesus hung around with prostitutes and tax collectors because he was trying to save them and convert them. He wasn't there to be their pimp. And that's what Michael Dourson is. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry, thank you. Thank you so much. Next is Shazi Visram, founder, and Senator Blumenthal introduced her a little bit. She was the founder and CEO of Happy Family Organic Baby Food. Shazi can speak about why business and industry is better off in the long term if EPA can be counted on to be strong and non-biased. Shazi.
Thank you. I just want to thank Senator Udall and Senator Blumenthal for their leadership. It's very encouraging. So I am here as a business person and as a mother. I started my business Happy Family because I knew that babies are most vulnerable and need pure, healthy food to grow their little bodies. And at Happy Family, we believe that every baby deserves to be a happy baby. And the core of happiness starts with health. The health and well-being of our children is directly tied to the health of our environment and our food. And that's why we've always been 100% organic. And, you know, I'm here to show you that business can be done right. So our business is doing quite well. It's grown from my idea to almost a $200 million business today in a few short years or long years. And it just shows that parents want their babies and their children protected from toxic pesticides that have been linked to developmental delays. That's why they buy our food. Pesticides like chlorpyrifos that have been linked to lower IQs and other neurological problems in kids with science. And this strikes very close to home for me as I actually have a child with autism. He has a mitochondrial dysfunction that makes it very hard for him to detox these chemicals. So these chemicals appear in his labs. And there are many children like my little boy Zane that are parts of vulnerable populations, and they need our advocacy and our protection. And we all know that not everyone can afford organic food. And that's why it's so important that agencies like the EPA set tough, science-based standards for pesticides and other chemicals used in our everyday products. It's also their role in our society to protect our children. They actually call Mike Dourson Mr. Pay-to-Spray. Now, I don't know how you get that moniker. And I wasn't calling him a doctor either. But he has dedicated his career to weakening those safety standards. You don't ever weaken safety standards. You always make them stronger. I mean, we send our food to a lab to test it to make sure it's pure before we sell it. Why would we weaken a safety standard? So for decades, he's been paid by Monsanto, Dow, and other chemical companies to twist the science to argue for standards that are 10, 100, or even 1,000 times weaker than the safety standards proposed by the EPA and other consumer protection agencies. For example, he argued for a weaker standard for the breakdown products of acetochlor, a weed killer linked to cancer that will be up for renewal in the next few years. He's even argued for continued use of chlorpyrifos, which the EPA had hoped to ban. If confirmed, Mike Dourson would decide the fate of these pesticides for our children, even though we know Monsanto and Dow have paid him to argue for their use. That is not the way you do business. Now is the wrong time to put the chemical industry's favorite scientist for hire in charge of pesticide safety at the EPA instead of someone who can make objective decisions. At Happy Family, we have a slogan for how we run our business. It's like my true north and how we make tough decisions. And what we say is, it's always babies before business. That's exactly what we need the government and the EPA to do now. We as a country need to put our American babies before a few big businesses. We need to put all of us before business. Let's stand up for what we all know is right. The health of our children depends on it. Thank you.
Ozzy, thank you. Thank you so much. And our final speaker today, Dr. David Michaels, Professor of Environmental and Occupational Health at the George Washington University Milken Institute of Public Health. Dr. Michaels led OSHA under President Obama, and he was Assistant Secretary for Energy, Environment, Safety, and Health from 1998 to 2001. Dr. Michaels has written the book, and I say that literally, about how industry uses junk science to justify lower safety standards for chemicals. Dr. Michaels, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Udall, families and friends who are here. In Michael Dourson, President Trump has nominated one of the country's leading practitioners of mercenary science to direct the federal government's efforts to protect our families from diseases caused by exposure to toxic chemicals. Not only does he apply the tobacco industry's strategy of manufacturing doubt, manipulating scientific data to defend toxic chemical after toxic chemical, he even worked for Big Tobacco long after it was clear that their only commitment to science was to invent results that would delay government action aimed at preventing smoking and saving lives. Now, I've had the privilege of working for federal public health agencies for a good part of my career. And in this capacity, I've seen firsthand how critical strong and independent science is in making decisions that protect the health and safety of all Americans. I've also spent decades researching and documenting the strategy of manufacturing scientific confusion and doubt, so firms can continue to sell deadly products no matter how many people are made sick. This strategy was invented by Big Tobacco, but it's now widely applied by polluters and manufacturers of dangerous chemicals and pesticides. But they can't do it alone. They need the help of scientists, like Michael Dourson. One classic tactic looks like this. A company or an industry has a product. First it was cigarettes, now it's a toxic chemical under scrutiny because of evidence it can make people sick. The manufacturer pays for a risk assessment that minimizes the risk, and the work is presented as legitimate science, even published in what looks like a legitimate peer-reviewed journal. If done effectively, the results seed doubt in the minds of decision makers and the public. It appears that there's a debate among scientists. No action is taken, and government efforts to prevent disease are delayed or undermined. The result? Instead of the public being protected, it's the dangerous product and its unethical manufacturer that gets protected. A key element in this playbook involves hiring product defense scientists, like Michael Dourson. They provide the doubt science that fosters confusion and downplays concerns about toxic chemicals. And Michael Dourson has a long track record of delivering for his clients. As recently as 2001, Dourson produced the results the tobacco industry wanted as part of their effort to stop the government from protecting non-smokers from breathing tobacco's cancer-causing smoke. Over and over again, chemical manufacturers have paid him and his firm, Terra, to help make the case for weak, inadequately protective public health protections. Internal industry emails have revealed that corporate officials felt they could trust Dourson and his firm. He is their go-to scientist to minimize the risks of exposure to their toxic chemicals and to weaken standards that should be protecting the health and safety of Americans. The corporations for whom Dourson works assert he produces sound science. But what he really does is manufacture studies that sound like science. In reality, his studies are mercenary efforts whose results are preordained. If he is hired to study a chemical, you can be sure he will conclude the chemical isn't really all that dangerous. And when Dourson delivers for his industry clients, the public pays through weakened public health protections. If confirmed by the Senate, Michael Dourson would be making decisions that directly impact every one of us every day. His record of putting moneyed interests before the public's health and safety makes him not merely deeply unqualified for this position, but also profoundly untrustworthy. He should not be entrusted with protecting the health of our families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you. Dr. Michael, thank you so much. We have Trevor Schaefer here. Trevor, you're the namesake of Trevor's Law, and you'd like to say a few words, is my understanding. Please come forward, Trevor. Trevor, okay.
Thank you, Senator Udall. I tell you, when you ask Jerry to do something, he does it. Well, we're very happy to be here today to hopefully help to express our concerns with the potential nominee, Michael Dourson, and how harmful that will be, and it'll set us back in our fight to move forward to protect this country from harmful toxins and chemicals in the environment, in the food and water we drink, and in the products that we use. We worked for a long time, for 7 years, to get a law passed, Trevor's Law, that was attached to TSCA, and my hat's off to Senator Udall for working so hard to get that done. But we're sitting here almost a year and a half later, and neither TSCA nor Trevor's Law has been implemented, and it's very frustrating. We need someone in the Environmental Protection Office that will speak and be a voice for children and communities across the country to protect them from toxic exposure, and Dourson is not that individual, and like I said before, we'd be taking a giant step back if we got him in office. So hopefully us being here today, all the families and individuals who have come out from across the country to express their concerns with him, hopefully it's going to make a difference, and we can get someone in there who has the mindset to protect our children and our communities. And I wanted to thank the Environmental Defense Fund and EWG and Safer Chemicals, Healthy Families for asking us to come out and working with them. It's been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you. Trevor, thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who's here and the courage they've had and the energy they're dedicating to this fight. Happy to answer a few questions if you have any. Yeah.
What specifically do you think Michael Dourson should recuse himself from? This is a question that I know some of the other senators on the committee have asked. But you know, if he does become confirmed in this position, what do you think he should recuse himself from?
Well, I don't think he should be confirmed in any way. We'll address that issue if in fact he's confirmed. But what we're all standing here about is every bit of our energy at this point is going to be put into defeating his nomination. I don't have any doubt this nomination will be heard tomorrow in the Environment and Public Works Committee. It will have a hearing. That's why everybody's here. We're all trying to educate all the senators that sit on that committee. If it makes it out of committee, then we're going to have a fight on the Senate floor, and I will promise you I'll get back. If he makes it through the Senate and he's confirmed, then I will get back to you on specifically. But this guy is let me just answer this in a little bit different way. He is a walking conflict of interest. He's worked for almost every chemical company out there on a variety of chemicals. And so I just don't see how anybody like that is fit to run this office. I mean, this is one of the most important offices at the important time where we put a new law in place. It needs to be implemented, and you need someone who's going to be an advocate, not a toxicologist for hire. Well, good. I guess everybody here did such a great job. You don't have any questions. Go out and write those great stories, and we're going to keep working. Thank you very much. Thank you.